GameStop employees of Reddit, what are some of your horror stories? Had a couple come in to return a Sesame Street video game and a controller. They had a receipt from over a year ago, the game was scratched to hell, and the controller was full of dried soda. They said it didn't work anymore, shocker, and were furious when I wouldn't give them their money back. Like standing there screaming at me. I was the manager, so I had no one else there to back me up. It was crazy. Their kid was bawling, the lady was swearing like a syphilitic sailor, and the husband couldn't finish a sentence. Pretty sure they were both super high too. So that was fun. When the PS2 came out, I was assistant manager, and my manager would sell them out of the back room at a markup. Such a snake. I took the demo Xbox home with a copy of Halo before the system launched one night and had a 4-player all-night party. One of our other local stores had someone dig through the outside wall and steal everything out of their back room. Also, when you get done alphabetizing the Wii games and notice your hands are covered in mystery sticky stuff from all of the filthy children handling the cases. That was pretty gross. One time a woman screamed at me because her kid was tearing open a toy before paying for it, and I kindly told him to wait a little bit. She seemed on the fence on whether she wanted to buy the toy or not for her kid, so you know I wasn't glad that her kid was already ripping it open. She then proceeded to scream at me for being really awful with kids, a horrible person, bad at my job, etc. Also, she wanted to complain to the manager if I ever talked to her kid like that again. She then angrily paid and walked out of the store. Also, people tinkering, modding their console and then trying to return it because it doesn't work anymore and angrily insisting on having it bought that way in GameStop. I was an assistant manager when one of the Madden games came out. 04, maybe. We were doing a big midnight opening for it and everybody was having a great time waiting for the game, which we were picking up from another store about 30 miles away. Around 11 o'clock, after people had been waiting for 2 hours after the mall closed, I got a phone call. The game wasn't coming. I almost broke down, sitting behind the register, dreading the thought of telling everybody that they just wasted their time. To make matters worse, another store within walking distance of us got their games. I just wanted to die that night. I am so grateful that our customers took it well and didn't get too angry. A gentleman comes in to buy one of our old 360 bundles, used the old system that required the HD. He brings it back a few days later and complains that it doesn't work. We start our normal troubleshooting methods in store. We couldn't figure anything out, so I do a swap, take his old system in as defective, then sell him a replacement bundle. I go through and try to wipe the system so we can ship it back to the warehouse. Cockroaches start crawling out of the system instead. I freak out. Throw this system in one of our giant shopping bags, throw that in a box, tape it shut, and throw that in another bag. My manager tells me to just shrink it out, meaning we take the loss and destroy it in the back. I take it out to the parking lot and have to throw it around to destroy it. These cockroaches freaking scatter like marbles on a floor. I'm dancing around the parking lot on my tiptoes to avoid the flood. It was awful. Second story, one of my regulars was a skunk farmer. I will say no more. Not an employee, but I was waiting in line to buy a game, and a guy came in with his 8-ish Y-old child I assumed was his son, and pointed the kid to the Nintendo section as he went over to PlayStation. I was daydreaming, off in my own world, and it took me a second to realize a moment later that I was hearing water splashing. I turned around to see the kid projectile vomiting all over the floor and the Nintendo games. The employee at the counter, the lady in front of me, and I all just watch this child empty his guts onto the floor, before the father comes up to the son. "You okay, bud?" "Yeah, alright, let's get out of here," and without a word or even looking at anyone else, the two leave the store. Once gone, the three of us exchange wild looks, and the employee tells us it's his first day running the store on his own. And he doesn't have any cleaning supplies or know what to do. Poor guy. Parents, please don't let your kids throw up in GameStop. Former employee. 2 wonderful stories. Older lady brings in a bag. She looks like an addict and she wants to sell her Wii. I put my hand in the bag and it's soaking wet, cat piss. She was furious I wouldn't take it. From that day forward, made every customer take all trades out of bags themselves. My first store was long and I had a kid and mom in back. Mom wasn't paying attention at all. 8-year-old walking around. Gets really quiet. Then mom rushes the kid out of the store. Go back there and he took a shit on the floor. Watch the tape. Mom finds him squatting. Lets him finish then takes him out. Worked part-time at GameStop while I was in college. The best story I love to tell is the mom and son story. 40-ish mom and 7 to 10-ish boy come into the store, in a large strip mall with lots of stores. Don't even look at merchandise, come up to the counter and ask to let the kid use the bathroom. Clarified she's not there to buy anything but has spent thousands of dollars in our store previously. We politely tell her we can't let customers use our bathroom because it's in the back of the store with lots of high-priced merchandise. That's the policy. We have cameras and corporate reviews the footage. Another story I have where I was wrongfully terminated substantiates that one. Additionally, what we don't tell her is that all the used game consoles that people sell back to us were stored in the bathroom. There was 1 month prior to Christmas I had to do some impressive yoga to get to the toilet. I'm sure those consoles were a hazmat, but I digress. But, not to be unsympathetic to this kid's plight, we tell the mom that the pizza place next door lets people use their bathroom if they buy something. And the cheapest thing is a $1 soda bottle of water. She starts flipping out on us and spewing expletives, telling us she's paid our salaries 10 times over and that we're going to hell. Yada yada yada. Then, no joke, tells her son to just go. Kid actually unzips and pees all over the carpet, in front of my register. Then they left. I've never been so grossed out and dumbfounded. Had to close up for the day and half the next day while GameStop paid to have our carpets sanitized. Resulted in a loss of pay for the weekend. Wonder what happened to that kid. He's gotta be in his 20s by now. Worked at GS a long time ago but I'll never forget this one. One night a guy brought in a really dusty and dirty GameCube wanting cash of course. I asked him if it worked and he said he didn't know because he hadn't played it in a long time. I told him that we have to check every console and when I turned it on and opened the lip about 100 roaches came running out all over the counter. I worked in a store where theft was a very common occurrence. But this one dude, he nabbed one of the cheap controllers off the wall from the back of the store, puts it in his backpack. Then comes over to the counter, he reaches across the counter, opens a drawer and steals a brand new game out of the drawer, takes it away from the register, opens it, waits in line, trades the game in for $25. Then he asks me to look for something in one of the bottom drawers and he steals back the game he just traded in a second time. After that he immediately left the store before I could notice he was gone. I gotta give him credit, he had some slick balls. So many other sketchy things too, but this one I just had to laugh at. I used to be the ASM of a GameStop but nothing really out of the ordinary happened there. Just a lot of lingerers. When I was the manager of a local game store though, there was definitely a lot of wild stories. The one that sticks out the most is this old dude we called Psycho Sexy, who would come in every Monday morning. Try to sell me or whoever was working bootleg porn DVDs. He would tell us they were good for busting fat-ass nuts too, and that he'd sell them to us super cheap. Every Monday he'd come in, open up his duffel bag of bootleg porn, get refused, then leave and come back the following Monday. This went on for almost 3 years. I was hired to help open a new store. A store where the manager was male, and everyone he hired female. He was definitely trying to cultivate a hot GameStop kind of situation. Word got around, and we had people coming in to visit ours when they had other stores much closer to where they lived. They didn't really buy anything, they kind of just lurked around for hours at a time, chatting the staff up. There were days when they'd wait for us to close up. That was kind of scary. I was eventually let go for not being friendly enough, which was apparently about 3 months before the manager had a total screaming meltdown during store hours, declared himself High Archangel, threw some shit at a customer and was later picked up by an ambulance. So I guess my horror story is the whole damn job. I got 2 stories. Quick one is a guy who would come in all the time to ask about buy obscure Vita dating sims and asking inappropriate questions like if the next Dragon Age, at this time would have been Inquisition, was going to, finally, have sex scenes in it. Next one is New Year's Day. Miserable, I'm working already, it's super early and first customer of the day, of the whole year. Is this like 7-foot-tall guy who comes in asking for AV cables for a PS4 cause the one he just bought didn't have one. We immediately tell him the PS4 only uses HDMI and so it wouldn't have AV cables, even confirming with him, you mean those red, yellow and white cables? He starts getting mad and asks again for the cables, which we again tell him don't exist. Maybe there's an adapter or something, but I've never seen one and we don't have them here regardless, maybe check Best Buy. Guy immediately starts screaming, you racist motherfuckers, get me this cable. I'm homeless, I just bought this thing for my grandkids. You're all racist white devil fuckers. Thankfully I froze in fear and confusion and my boss took over and just scooted the guy out the door. Hell of a way to start the year. The guy who comes in with obviously stolen stuff but can't be called out on it so he just keeps it up. I once had a lady and her teenage son come in to trade in several DVDs in games they had just stolen from the Walmart behind the strip mall where our store was. Walmart employee calls me to ask if they are in my store and says the cops are on the way, so stall or do what you can to keep them there. I said sure. I told them the cash versus store credit value of their items without mentioning that I can't even take them because they are still wrapped in the cellophane. I walk them around the store and talk about which games are the best value for the money, etc. The cops show up and ask them to step outside and I just smile and go back behind the counter. They followed the police out and one officer comes back a minute later to get the merchandise. Last I heard about it. Not a horror story but definitely weird. Then there was this wealthy couple who had 3 kids and each kid had a Wii, a PS3, and an Xbox 360. They would pre-order every major game that came out for each system, always the deluxe edition. They spent a ton of money in our store. And they were crazy. So abusive to every employee, they cussed at us and called us stupid. They would ask for things they knew they couldn't have and then throw a fit. They would scour their receipts for anything that could be a mistake and make you explain it to them over and over. I went to work at a different company and they came into my store there, and got in line for my favorite cashier. I immediately called a manager over when it was their turn to check out. Explained how I knew then and that there was a 99% chance they would make the cashier cry. He went over and just as he got there they were beginning to raise their voices about some supposed mistake. Luckily that manager is super good at handling people and got them out without letting them get a word in edgewise. I practically had PTSD from dealing with them. I think they got off on abusing people together. They would sometimes be laughing as they did it. If they found a legitimate mistake in anything, their faces would just light up. Truly evil people. Former GS employee here. Worked in a store on the edge of a super sketchy part of Akron, Ohio. Back in the PS2 era, a guy brought in a box of trades. There were 3 games: Leisure Suit Larry, Playboy, The Mansion, The Guy Game. The rest of the box was nothing but porn on VHS. He was politely asked to leave. He asked us why. My co-worker's response had me keeling over. Because there's jizz all over your shit, he left. This was 2007 or so. GameStop had a used game return policy, 7 days no questions asked, full refund. People would abuse this constantly, like a rental service. We knew it, and we were able to flag people who did it too often and decline them the returns. Manager policy, not company policy. Then there was this one bitch. Old lady, gaggle of grandkids. Seemed so sweet, was very nice to us while in the store, asking for help, recommendations, etc. Bought them a PS2 and a freaking gigantic stack of games, like had to be 20 to 25 at least. Her total came out over $400. I rang her out, handed her the multiple bags of stuff, and said to the kids something along the lines of, "Wow, you guys are lucky to have such a great grandma. This many games will last you months." The grandma chuckled and said, "Oh, they're only in town for the week. You guys have that 7-day return policy, I'll see you in 6 days." Years ago, 2007-2008-ish, I trained a kid that turned around and robbed the store at gunpoint a month after we fired him for stealing. He and his buddies left without shooting anyone. My coworker was on the phone with the cops after he left while I was getting his old employee file out. Reading off his 2 addresses he had down, parents and grandparents, phone number, etc. He's still serving time as the gun they used was apparently used in another homicide. I got scolded by management for helping a woman for 30 minutes. She bought 12 games and was looking for good recommendations for her son, who is on the spectrum. I found every game on her list and a few more to surprise him. Those surprise games were Okami and Katamari Damacy. She was overjoyed that her son was going to have lots of good games to play. Why were they mad over such a large sale? Oh, because they weren't fucking used. Fuck that store. That woman wanted to make sure her son was happy and I was tasked to do so. I know I did a good job and you guys can close shop. Today, a customer brings in probably the grossest PlayStation 4 I've ever seen. I think, oh no, please don't have roaches. I hold it on end and tap it against the floor and nothing falls out, nor is there an rustling of things moving. No telltale signs. I take it in. My coworker decides he needs to find out why it is so dirty before cleaning it and opens it up. Inside is the world's first deluxe roach hotel. Managed to keep the hoard contained in the box the console was going in. That console is gone now. Why are people gross? I worked at GameStop, where I met my husband. He was a store manager there for 12 years. This is a story about him though, not me. We had only been together for a few months. I quit and got a different job. He was still there. I was also in the store all the time still. We were both off and hanging out in a park by our apartment, enjoying the weather. This kid, about 10 years old, came over while we were sitting and talking on a bench. He was being a little asshole, dry humping a cannon behind us. Yelling at my husband that he was a fat piece of shit, he's a big dude but seriously, and generally being a terror. We left. A few weeks later, a little game called GTA comes out. My husband is working, I'm hanging out in the store. Who walks in? That little fucker and his mom, looking to get GTA. I got to watch my husband get the biggest shit-eating grin on his face and ruin this kid's life by letting his mom know that this game is for more mature people and informing his mother of his behavior at the park a few weeks back. They left, him crying, her admonishing him. I got a big retail boner. I've worked at one since October of last year and still do as a guy. I've also worked for most of the early, midnight releases, so I have a few stories. Early release of RDR2, I was manning the door, only letting in 10 people at a time. We have a small store. The customers had ticket numbers they picked up earlier and they were already in order. If you didn't have a ticket number, you had to go to the back of the line. One huge buff dude came and didn't have a ticket number but apparently really wanted this game, so he tackled me against the door and tried to barge in. And I foolishly blocked him, pissing off this large man to defend my minimum wage job. He eventually went to the back and did that. Respect nod when he eventually walked out with the game. Some guy had a Diablo Edition Switch that he pre-ordered, and he didn't know how taxes worked. A normal Switch is $320 with taxes, and he was wondering why he was being charged extra. My manager eventually took over, showing him on a calculator how much it was. He left them, came back later saying he didn't have a receipt. I put the receipt in the bag, like I always do. My manager Sammy put it in the bag, a random lady Sammy put it in the bag. But it wasn't, and now he was threatening to call corporate. My manager goes to review the camera footage while I pretend to look through the trash for his receipt and listen to him complain. My manager comes out and tells him the receipt was in his wallet. This one doesn't apply to me, but my coworkers. We have 2 women working in the store, and they have to put up with the thirstiest, creepiest, most trashy people I've met. I've seen people hit on my coworkers frequently, making my coworkers visually uncomfortable. We've had stalkers that would come in just to stare at my coworkers. Some people would ask for them specifically, just so they have a chance to talk to them. There are those that think girls don't know anything about games and insult them and ask for me or one of my male coworkers. We usually just make the sale and try to get them out as soon as possible. It's a very, very unfortunate thing to say that the cops are called semi-regularly because of people getting aggressive or handsy towards my female coworkers. My manager, being a woman herself, would like more hours given to this store so people don't have to work by themselves, because it is legitimately dangerous, but corporate says no.